Hello, everyone. I am back with a video that has been long anticipated for myself to make. I just haven't gotten around to it until now, and thank goodness I'm finally getting the wherewithal to do this because this is an artist that I've not really spoken a whole lot about on this channel yet, but I owe so much to in terms of my love of music. And that artist is, of course, the Canadian superstar icon Céline Dion. I have reviewed her newest album, Courage, which came out this past November, and so that's the only Céline really I've talked about on this channel. And I had a lot of great things to say about that record. It really sort of brought about although it was even before Courage came out, a resurgence for me in loving and rediscovering Céline Dion's music. Now, obviously, when people think of Céline Dion, the 90s are really what comes to mind. The 90s was definitely when Céline was at her apex. Her best songs definitely came from that decade or around that time. But of course, she also released, alongside releasing at least, I think, 10 English language albums. Is it 10 or 9? I can't quite do the math in my head right now. Maybe 11. She also released at least 5 or 6 or 7 French studio albums. However, those albums were not really promoted so much in the US markets. They were more, Canada, France, one of her big albums and one of the biggest French selling albums of all time, was a huge, huge hit. And that was from the early 90s. 80s. Obviously, Céline was also discovered through Eurovision in 1989, I believe it was, which is pretty cool. Even though she wasn't representing a European country that she's really from, she was representing Switzerland. She does speak French, at least, and they speak French in Switzerland, so there's a bit of a connection there, but she's Quebecois. But, anyway, it's still awesome to see, Eurovision artists become such superstar icons, because between Céline Dion and ABBA, we haven't really gotten a whole lot of those. So I will preface this video by saying I am going to be talking about my personal favorite Céline Dion songs. I had originally thought that I might do a little bit more of a discography review. I thought maybe there were some albums of hers in the past that I would do individual album reviews for. I apologize. I just ultimately decided that as much as I do love Céline Dion, I felt like there were more songs scattered across her whole catalog that I felt really strongly about talking about than I did about just going through one album at a time, or even just a few albums. There's definitely, if I had to pick a few albums to review on this channel, there's definitely a few that come to mind, but because I'm making this video, I'm not entirely sure I'm going to do that. Never say never, but I hate to say it, but I do kind of feel like unless Céline releases new music, I don't necessarily intend to go back and review her past albums individually. There's just too much other music I want to cover. And like I said, I do love Céline, but I'm not necessarily someone who's followed her career from the beginning, obviously. And I'm not necessarily someone who's dived into every single song on all of her records, particularly her French records. I am actually really out of touch with her French music, and I really apologize for that. I'm going to work to, discover and listen to all of her French albums. The only French album of hers that I have heard is her most recent, Encore un soir, which was released in 2016. And that's really the only French album of hers I've heard at least most of the songs from. So, that's unfortunately going to make this video only about her English language songs. From her English studio album. So I apologize. I'm not going to be talking about, when I talk about my favorite Céline songs, I'm not going to be talking about any of the French ones. That could be another video. And so that's what I mean. There will be more Céline content, because I do think sometime down the road, I might make a same video like I'm doing now, but only talk about her French language music. And I do love her singing in French. She's also sung in Spanish. She sings in Latin. She's sung in a lot of different languages, but she, predominantly, of course, is a French speaker from Quebec, which I have been to Quebec City. It is a beautiful place. I would love to go again. I went as a kid. And so I'm going to be just focusing on her English language stuff. And then, like I said, maybe down the road, maybe I can do a video about my favorite French songs. But with that being said, I'm going to, be talking about songs that come out from her first album in 1990 all the way to her most recent. So she's had a 30-year career, and so there's a lot to cover. And it was difficult. I decided ultimately to go with 20 songs. I was going to do 15, but I just couldn't narrow it down. So I'm going to be discussing my 20 favorite songs of her career. And these songs are in some kind of order, although it's a little hard for me to, I have my favorites. But, don't take this order too seriously. All of the songs that I talk about are really, in my opinion, top tier Celine Dion songs. So they're all deserving of possibly even being number one, although there's definitely a few that really stand out. And I'm sure a lot of this is going to be a bit of a normie list because a lot of these songs are ones we've all heard. I mean, you can't escape some of these Celine Dion classics. And of course, they're going to be mostly ballads because that's what she's really known for. And I will just say this. Some of these songs, there's not a whole lot to talk about because the lyrics are very straightforward. Now, Celine does not really write her own stuff. That's just not really what she ever was really known for. That's not really her talent. Sometimes I think she does do a little bit of co-writing here and there, but it's very minimal. She has a really great catalog of songwriters that work for her. She has some amazing lyrics that I wish she'd written, but I understand, she's at the end of the day kind of more of a vocal performer than she is a singer-songwriter. And so with vocals as good as Celine's, you can get away with singing other people's lyrics, especially since I know she has a huge hand in, the direction she wants the lyrics to be in and making sure it's personal to her. Because a lot of the songs are deeply personal to her. So it's not like it's very manufactured. Even though some of the songs might be a bit basic on a pretty basic level lyrically, we all can understand what it is she's singing about. There isn't too much lyrical interpretation that needs to go through that. So bear with me. Some of these reviews might go a little quicker, but that's just because I do want to make sure this video is not eons long. And I also have to apologize. Guys, I unfortunately am not going to be able to use audio snippets, which is something I really liked doing when I did previous countdown videos. I just, unfortunately, with YouTube and the way it is, even if I did just 5 or 10 second snippets, it could still get flagged for copyright, and then I can't monetize this video. We're all going through a crisis right now. Money is tight, so I'm sorry. If I'm going to put the effort into making these videos, I need to also get something in return for it, so even if it's pennies. So unfortunately, in the sake of having to monetize my videos, I'm not going to be able to include audio snippets. I am really sorry, but I will be able to include visuals. And I will have a playlist linked of the 20 songs that I talk about in Apple Music, which if anyone has Spotify, you can just move that over to Spotify, look at the songs and listen to them in that order there. But I will have a playlist linked so that you can listen to any of these songs if you want. But again, I do apologize. I'd really like to include audio snippets. A lot of these songs I think y'all have heard already anyway, so I don't know if you necessarily need that sort of context, but it is what it is. Because bear in mind, a lot of these are big singles. Celine was very smart with her singles. Very smart with her singles. There's definitely deep cuts in this list, but I have to be honest, it's definitely, when it comes to Celine Dion, I'm pretty basic. I like some of the classics. I'm not necessarily that, well, I don't like her top songs. I like her, deep cuts only. To be honest, her singles were the best for the most part. So right off the bat, let's get into this list. So at number 20, we actually do start out with a deep cut. So we have, well, it was a single, although it wasn't a huge, huge single, from her fourth English studio album, Falling Into You, from 1996, Call the Man. This was, again, like a fifth single, I think, released from this record, and it was definitely like the last single. It was sort of like one that was a little more under the radar. And didn't get quite the same level of radio play. I ultimately decided to include this song, and trust me, it was a very difficult decision for me because there was another song that just edged out of it because of it. But I ultimately did decide to include it because I do really love the anthemic gospel nature of this song, and I do really appreciate the spiritual undertone to it. I mean, some of her music can be her music is mostly very secular, and there's definitely undertones of spirituality in a lot of her stuff, but this is probably one of her most overtly spiritual moments where she is really calling out for a spiritual figure. Now, I mean, it's called The Man in the song. You have to remember that, this is 25 years ago. And I think Ariana Grande's, God is a Woman comes to mind. I don't think that the sort of feminist ideology around naming God as a woman was quite so prevalent, unfortunately, back in those days. So it would have been great if the song was called Call the Woman. Or if it had just been, Call the One, why did it have to be the man? Because there is this undertone of, oh, a man is the only one who can fix all of these problems, when in reality, look at it, men are the ones who created almost all of these problems. So it's a little bit, and so now that I'm even saying it, I'm like, maybe this song should have been edged out, and maybe I should have put the other song I was going to talk about. So maybe I'll have this spot shared with my 21st pick, which was Love Me Back to Life from her 2013 album, which was the lead single. I do really love the melody of this song. I really like the anthemic choral elements, as well as that Spanish guitar. And so it's also from an album that is one of my favorite albums of hers. Her 1996 album, Falling Into You, I think is possibly her best album to date, at least in English, like I said. There are so many standout songs on that record. It was kind of hard to think, like, this song could have been included too, or this one. But I wanted to give a shout out to Call the Man. I do think that if you take the gender part about calling, Jesus out, or whatever that might be, and whatever that might signify, this still is a really powerful moment. Where does the future go? Who's going to solve all our problems? It's a very sort of call to action, call to contemplate, to try and to get us moving in a positive direction around sort of building and lifting us all together. And I think that this song does carry across that message really powerfully. I mean, she reaches some amazing high notes on this track. It's just the one thing that, is a bit unfortunate about it is the fact that we are talking about a male figure, so to speak, because of the lyrics. That is supposedly Jesus. It's very vague, but it's pretty heavily implied. So, I mean, all of that aside, I still just felt like I needed to highlight this song. Also because my number 19 pick is a song who has similar songwriters, Andy Hill and Peter Sinfield. The song is called Think Twice, and it was a single off of her third English studio album from 1993 called The Color of My Love. This was released as the third single off of this record in July of 1994. It had a music video. It's a little bit more rock inspired, but it's definitely got similarities to Call the Man. So you can tell that there's, I think, in terms of the composition of the song, some similar songwriters employed. It was a huge hit. And the synthesizers that are used, the soft, atmospheric production, it's so early 90s. It does have a bit of a dated sound to it, but it is still such a classic. The way it really explodes and builds up with that energy. The powerful chorus, think twice before you leave my life. A couple that are on the edge of a relationship falling apart, and, for one, Céline really trying to implore the importance of them kind of reconnecting and discovering that this is a moment of crisis, but we could we could turn this corner into something more beautiful. And so do you really want to give this all up? And there's a real essence of urgency to this song. It really comes through. Her vocals just skyrocket towards the end. I mean, again, it's a very great classic formula that we see her replicate many more times, but it's a formula that works. And I have nothing else really to say. So at number 18, because she doesn't write her own music, I feel like it's okay for me to include a cover. This is a cover song, The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face. This was released for her first compilation hits album in 1999 called All the Way, A Decade of Song. And this was actually a single from that project. This is a song that was originally written by a British songwriter named Ewan MacColl in the 50s. It's a folkier song. It has then been re-recorded multiple times from everyone from over the decades, from Roberta Flack to Elvis to, of course, Miss Céline Dion. And the way she takes this cover, it's so soft and cooing and very mellow. but it really simmers in the emotion that I think the original version, I don't want to say it lacks, but I really feel like Celine is so good at adapting these kind of classic songs. And it definitely has a little bit of an Elvis feel to it. And so she covers an Elvis song on her Christmas album, Blue Christmas. It's also the same kind of energy. It's like very slow, very deliberate, liquid, very liquid vocals that just sort of pour out like honey, like slow but steady in like a clear kind of form to create really kind of close moment. And so I felt like I wanted to give a shout out to this one. All right, so at number 17, we go to 2007, her album Taking Chances, which is an album that I gotta be honest with you, I never heard the full part of the whole thing of. I only heard snippets because I didn't follow that album when it came out, and it kind of was just my one Celine Dion blind spot. I was like, oh yeah, she released an album then. From what I can understand, that album didn't do very well. And it was definitely, at that point, when she was in Vegas and kind of wanting to kind of milk the sort of more mainstream electronic, more kind of current audience in a way that Cher has done in the past, for example. And I don't know if that necessarily paid off for her in the long run. I think that, it felt a little bit like chasing trends. But there's a song called Shadow of Love on that record that I do find very inviting. There's definitely, like I said earlier, a Cher quality to this song. It sounds like a Cher song. And there's a bravado to this song that I just really appreciate. It's full of energy, but it's also cautious because it's it's about running away from love and not understanding, that the inclinations and urges that you have, that you hide away for so long, they only ever keep catching up to you and multiplying. And so you realize looking back that you have just fed this fire even more. And so you need to step into the light and really embrace it. And this song has that feeling of this sort of cathartic release during the chorus, which is definitely very more mainstream pop. It also sounds a little bit like something Sia would have done a few years later with, her bigger hits. But, I have no problem with it. I think that with her latest record, Celine, I think, illustrated that she can take other songwriters like Sia, for example, and have them create something that is more modern, more contemporary, but it still has a classic feel to it. It still is timeless in its own way. It doesn't feel so dated. And I think that this is one of the songs on that record that captures that also is so melodically strong. At number 16, I had to throw in the song Courage from her most recent album. I've talked about this song ad nauseum at this point because I reviewed it in my album review. I also gave this song a shout out in not only the top 25 songs of 2019, but it also, I believe made it onto my top songs of the decade playlist video. So I've talked about this song so much. I mean, from the songwriting to the deliberate, powerful, empowering melody. I feel this song so much and the emotion behind it, singing about her late husband, Renee, and the feelings of, having to move on and through life and not having your partner with you. It's a scary time, but you have to keep soldiering on. You have to have the courage to look the new day in the face and say, I will make new memories. I will not dishonor you by living my best life going forward. We will always be together. You'll always be in my heart, but I have to move on and I have to keep that positivity strong. But it's hard. So I definitely need to give this song a shout out one more time. And number 15, Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast, a duet with this male singer Piabo Bryson for the 1991 Disney animated feature film of the same title. This song obviously came out for that movie and it was in the closing credits. I do love the Ariana Grande and John Legend version from the 2017 film. I'm one of the few people who actually thinks it really does hold a candle to this. But I hadn't heard the 1991 version in a while, and I re-listened to it, and it still is superior. It just is. I mean, it's such a classic Disney song. And Angela Lansbury, who sings it in the film, does an impeccable job. So I honestly still think the Angela Lansbury version is even above this version. because this is more of an R&B take on like what's more on, in the film, what's more of a sort of classical orchestral piece. And yeah, it's just timeless music, timeless romance music, and one of the greatest love songs, especially from a film. And of course, this isn't the only great love song from a film that Céline is known for, but it's one of those that, like I said, you don't even need for me to play a snippet because you know which one I'm talking about, and what more is there to say? So, in 2003, Céline released an album called One Heart. And again, I feel like this album sort of didn't really get the commercial. I mean, it was a hit, but it wasn't quite, by critics applauded as something that innovative. It felt a little bit more like a Chasing Trends record for her, especially at that point since she had begun her Las Vegas residency and she was really sort of trying to build her sort of merchandising, Vegas empire. It felt a little bit more like that. Not that these songs are not still very personal, but it's definitely one of my least favorite Céline Dion albums. But there is one song that did stand out for me, and that is the closing track, I Know What Love Is. I will fall and you will catch me always. Time has taught me this. I will fly and you will be there to guide me straight up to my heart, its highest wish. I feel you close to me and I know what love is. Please tell me that you cannot listen to that chorus and just get welled up with emotion. I can really see this as that honeymoon song, that moment where you finally feel what that connection you've been looking for your whole life really feels like. It's something that I'm not entirely sure I've yet to experience. Probably haven't. And it will have just even more impact on me listening to a song like this when that does occur. But, there's not a whole lot that needs to be said. It's a simple, we've got the piano and we've got some light orchestral. It's so heavenly the way this song opens up and around her vocals. And again, I'm going to mention this. The choruses are so strong and so well composed. I reference Céline a lot when I talk about particularly pop music, but when I talk about music in general and having a memorable chorus, that is something that Céline almost always does so well. And I know it can't be just her, it's her producers, it's her composers, it's her songwriters, but the whole team behind it, I mean, she really knows how to pick amazing songs to sing, and the emotion is just, it plays you like a fiddle, it really, it's emotional as it gets with some of her melodies. And I don't know of that many other major pop diva singers who have just such a catalog of soaring, gorgeous melodic songs as she does. And I'll keep referencing that going forward. That always does sit right about all these powerful moments, especially those ballads. I don't know what else to say. At number 13, To Love You More. This was a song that was released originally as a new, fresh single in October of 1995, which was then put on a re-edition of The Color of My Love. But then it was also included in her album Let's Talk About Love from 1997 in the American or US and Canadian version. So it had several homes. But it's another really great mid-90s for her, power ballad for her. The violin features very prominently on this song, which I think is kind of interesting, giving it a little bit more of an folksy feel, even though underneath of it is just still, it's very similar to some of those other huge Céline Dion big hits, power ballads that I have higher up on this list. It feels in a way like a prototype for those bigger songs that were coming down the pike. But once again, what a melody. What a melody. And what space around those very, very light vocals of hers. I mean, she just had this crystal clear soprano vocal that just is heaven to listen to. I mean, I will again just restate this, that I think that Céline has, especially, back in the day, one of the best female vocals that I've ever heard. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. So that's why I don't give her necessarily that much flack for not writing her own stuff. You can't be that talented, you can't have vocals like that and be able to also write such amazing songs. Like that would be too much power. I mean, just saying, like it's just impeccable. So my 12th pick is another deep cut song called If That's What It Takes from her album Falling Into You. There's just something really feel good about this song. It's hopeful, and yet it's a little bit melancholy in parts. You're the bravest of hearts. You're the strongest of souls. You're my light in the dark. You're the place I call home. You can say it's all right, but I know that you're breaking up inside. I see it in your eyes. Even you face the night. When the storm rises up, when the shadows descend, every beat of my heart, every day without end. Every second I live, that's the promise I make. Baby, that's what I'll give if that's what it takes. This is one of those songs that's obviously about like a romantic thing with a partner and sort of comforting them in their darker hours, realizing that in a relationship, there are going to be moments where one has to lift the other up, and realizing that it's going to take the other's strength to sometimes, comfort and lift up the others, and it'll be hard, but it's worth it because you love that person so deeply and powerfully. But I also feel like this song is so broad and about just lifting up other people, like a child, like your child, for example. I feel like there's definitely something about this motherly feeling that comes through with this song that, I don't know, maybe because I was a child in the 90s, I feel like Céline is my 90s mama coming down from the heavens, singing to me as a baby. But there's something very sort of lullaby-like in this song that I feel like would have been beautifully stripped down to be a gorgeous lullaby for a child. And there's like an innocence to this song that just is so emotional for me. I don't know how else to describe it, but I was 3 years old when this song came out, and I think about, I don't know, it takes me back to being a little kid, and there's something so warm and inviting, like a mother's arms, about Celine's songs that I feel so connected to. And I didn't start listening to this song until a couple of years ago, because it was a deep cut. It wasn't a single that was like something we had all heard. But when I went into Falling Into You and I finally got into that album, this was like a song that instantly stood out to me. And I was like, why wasn't this a single? Like, this is phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, this is a song that gives you the strength to keep going like nothing else. At number 11, Where Does My Heart Beat Now? This is probably like one of her first English songs, English singles from her 1990 album Unison. If you want to talk about the prototype for Céline power ballads, but also, a bit more very upbeat track at one, this is known as the song that really bridged her out, from the Eurovision world to the international audience that she has today. I mean, this song just like crashes on you like waves on a rocky shore. It's got that bombast. It shows off her vocals so wonderfully over that pulsing synth late 80s beat. And so it really is a wonderful concoction of everything that's great about Céline Dion, and it's a classic song that cannot be understated at all. It was performed at the Eurovision Song Contest in 1989, along with the song that actually made her win that contest, which was a French song called Ne partez pas sans moi. But the song she also sang with that was, I think, more of the bigger hit. Everyone was like, oh, look at that. Like, we love the Eurovision winning song, but look at that English song she just performed for us. Like, this is an artist to watch. And so this is, again, a song that just has that spark. It has that special something, and we don't see that very often, especially with debut singles these days. And I listened back on this song, and I didn't really listen to this song until about maybe 5 years ago. I heard it for the first time, like fully aware that I was listening to it, because it got eclipsed by so many of other big radio singles, but it's still such a huge classic. And the best song on that debut album for sure, because I have to be completely honest with you, her debut album is so dated to me that it's hard for me to really get into a lot of the other songs on Unison. Her sophomore album, which is titled Céline Dion, which was released in 1992, is also a bit in the same boat for me. And unfortunately, you're not going to see songs from that second album on this list. Though if I had to pick one song that I really did enjoy from that, would probably be If You Asked Me To. Maybe that would have made it onto the top 25, but there's just so many great songs. At number 10, Because You Loved Me, the song from the film Up Close and Personal, and I believe it was the first single for North America, South America, and Asia for that album, but it was the second single for Australia. This was a Diane Warren song. Diane Warren is an amazing songwriter and musician in her own right. But, you know, I mean, what else really is there for me to say? I mean, the Michelle Pfeiffer movie Up Close and Personal, I haven't actually seen it, but it's a staple kind of like romantic movie from the 90s. And Céline, I think at this point really established her, I don't want to say her hallmark status, but I mean, she became, you know, the diva to attach to rom-coms. She became the diva to attach to notebook style movies. This song is full of sparks and chemistry. I don't know how else to describe it, but there's something so primal about this song. It's an outcry of what love meant to the person who receives it. It has just such a soaring anthemic chorus. I mean, it's a song that we have all heard since we were little. I think this was one of those Celine Dion songs that I probably first heard at like the shopping mall as a kid, because it would always be playing from like all of those clothing stores. Because it was such a, like, in the late 90s, you just couldn't escape this song really. And when I came back to it so many years later, I was just like, gosh, this is one of those 90s normie songs that I just can't help but fall in love with. It's so kind of saccharine, but I just gobble it up. You know, it's one of those songs I'm just unashamed to really, really enjoy, even if it might come across as a little bit hallmarky or a little bit, you know, shopping mall music, elevator music. I don't care. I'm going to gobble it up. It's also a very feminine song, and I really appreciate that femininity. It's like oozing that. It's so delicate and fragile, but like strong at the same time. At number 9, All by Myself. So another huge, huge cut from Falling Into You. Lyrically, I don't think there's a song from Celine's catalog that speaks to me more than this song. Speaking about the fear one has at a certain point in their lives where they realize they might very well be alone for their whole entire life. And is that okay? Is that something they can really handle? There's an acceptance that you need to start to fully embrace at a certain age, that you, and I think that, you know, women in particular often face this more than men as they approach their 30s. This feeling of, you know, what will society think of me? How will I feel like my self-worth is my own, and it's not attached to me having a partner and continuing this normal, you know, road of being a housewife or being a married woman. But at the same time, the fragility of this song and realizing that, you know, the heart wants what it wants. What's really interesting is that the original version of this song, which is actually from the 70s, was written by a man, artist Eric Carmen. This song has been covered so many times. I mean, Sheryl Crow did a version of it. Celine's is the most noteworthy. Again, when Celine covers a song, I think her cover is the best cover. But this is, you know, it's tricky because, again, I feel like now I'm like having to tell Eric Carmen, you know, you're the one who really deserves all these accolades. But what Céline does with this song is so special. I'll confess, I have not heard the Eric Carmen version. I actually, in doing research for this video, didn't even realize that it was a cover from a 70s song. I knew a lot of these Céline songs were covers, and it kind of shocked me to discover that. But I didn't know this one was. And it was a little bit shocking because, again, there's just something about this song that seemed like it was written by a woman. So I was a little bit surprised. But the energy still translates. I think what Céline does with this song in describing that sort of feeling of, you know, futility, like continuing down a road of searching for someone, when you know that it's never worked for you in the past, and you really have to learn to accept that you might be alone forever. And there is such a despondency to this song that is so relatable and so rainy afternoon or rainy evening. But it's one of those moments that you have to go through. And I think everyone will at some point. I respond to this song so much. And Celine's version is just so powerful that, yeah, I don't know. I think, in my opinion, it eclipses all the other versions. There's just, again, something about Celine's voice. So at number 8, I decided to, and maybe this one's a little high, but I did decide to give a shout out to the closing song on the deluxe edition of her most recent album, Courage, titled The Hard Way. I talk about this song in my album review, and it's also included in my top 25 songs of the of 2019 video. It's such a crime that this is not on the standard edition of that album, and it is just such a moment. It is such a moment of energy, of uplifting, powerful, get up out of your seat and belt at the top of your lungs for your life. I could not discuss my favorite Celine Dion songs without giving it a mention. And it made it into the top 10 for me because it's just that powerful. At number 7, so The Prayer, a duet between Italian artist Andrea Bocelli and Céline. This was actually originally recorded for a 1998 animated film, kids movie called Quest for Camelot, which I have seen. I didn't know that this song was attached for it. But then it was later included as a duet on Celine's Christmas album, and as well as in 1999, Andrea's album Sogno. This is one of those iconic, more opera, classical crossover moments. Very secular, but at the same time hinting at a spiritual energy. So beautifully do those two vocalists tie together. I mean, we're talking top-tier vocalists. We're talking top-tier vocalists here between Bocelli and Dion. And they play off of each other beautifully. There's lyrics in Italian. Again, I think of this song as a lullaby. I think of this song as, something a mother would sing to their child when they're going through a harder time, or even just as a baby. I pray you find your light, and we watch you as you grow. And when stars come out each night, it has those sort of sing-song lullaby characteristics that make it so appealing to children. But it's appealing to the child inside all of us. I have to give a shout out to Lady Gaga's One World Together at Home benefit concert series that she just did. Because at the end, Céline, Lady Gaga, and Andrea, as well as a phenomenal pianist, came together to perform this song. And hearing Lady Gaga perform this song at that special was the highlight for sure. She pairs so beautifully with Celine's vocals. I will say John Legend's inclusion was definitely left field, and I don't think it suited it. No hate to John, but I just did not feel like he fit in with that song and the rendition of it. Just his vocal styling and everything was just not really very well suited to it. It takes more of an operatic classical vocal. But for what they did an amazing job. It was goosebumps all over, and one of the best songs of all time, in my opinion. And a really, really magical moment. A really, really magical, sacred moment. Number 6, It's All Coming Back to Me Now. A song that no one can talk about Celine Dion without mentioning. One of those huge, iconic power singles. I think it has a bit of that, Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You thing to it. Because it's so over the top and dramatic and anthemic that it's almost theatrical. And there is a level of theater to this song that I think is brilliant because it's so bombastic. It's so robust. It's, you can hear, Céline got that, pound her chest, and sting those lyrics out with this really powerful belt. She really kind of starts that on this song, like that trend, and it really carries through. And then there's those soft moments where, we come into softer choruses and then bombastic choruses, and it's a real opus of a track. And I just had to, of course, give it its shout out. I love the feeling of, waves of nostalgia coming back to you, or that fresh, it's a song that, how Florence references happiness hit her like a train on a track. It has that feeling of all of a sudden waking up and being feeling all this energy. And that's why I feel like if there was any Celine song that would be better suited for a musical, it would be this song, because the way it's performed, it has a musical quality. It's very performative. It's very much about like that moment of realization of like, I remember how much I cared for you, and it's all coming back to me now. And you can feel that when she delivers it. At number 5, we have another unapologetic big 90s moment from Céline. That's the Way It Is. It's funny, actually. I sort of thought this song was a bit cheesy when I was younger because it was always playing at, like, when I worked at Bob Evans, for example, which is like a sort of a mom and pop breakfast restaurant. They always played this song, and I was like, it kind of fatigued me a little bit. But coming back to it out of the retail environment, I fell in love with this song all over again. Before, it was always a song I just heard in, doctors' waiting rooms. And it didn't really have that spark for me. But listening to it in headphones and really appreciating it, seeing the music video, oh my goodness. Like, this is one of those moments where I just want to karaoke it up. I want to, lip sync for my life to this song on RuPaul's Drag Race stage. Because I feel so much positivity with this song. It's just like an amazing, catchy chorus, as campy as it is. I think that's the delight of it. And it was one of her first collaborations with this Swedish pop producer icon, Max Martin. And I definitely think that he brings a little bit of that Eurodance flair to this song, which elevates it. So yeah, it's one of those staple Max Martin tracks where his magic is just so much presence on it that matches so well with Celine's innocent, jubilant vocals, all in its divine time. And that's the way it is. And it has that, get up by your bootstraps and just accept and, with the hand you're dwelt blossom. And it's a positive spin on a song like All By Myself, which is sort of the negative reflection of that energy. Oh, it's so sad. Woe is me that I'm still single and I haven't found the one. Will I ever find that person? That's the way it is that 180 positive spin. Things will happen when they are meant to happen. And that's the beauty of it. There's a positive beauty to it. You don't want to be forced into something that isn't real love. When you want it the most, there is no easy way out. Don't surrender, because you can win in this thing called love. Maybe I don't always believe this song and its unbridled optimism, but it's definitely something I need more of a dose of in my life. So when I listen to it, it really gets me going. It really just puts a positive spin on everything in my life that I so desperately need right now. At number 4, A New Day Has Come. So now we're getting to sort of like the God tier level of Celine Dion songs. In the essence of brevity, all I will say is that A New Day Has Come absolutely floored me when I first heard it. This could have easily been number 1, by the way. I had such a hard time ranking these top songs. But there's a radio mix, and then there's the more powerful ballad mix, which is more expanded. And I prefer the ballad version to the radio version. Even though the radio version is great, I get why it exists. It takes a similar spin to That's the Way It Is and gives you a really uplifting, soaring track. But when she gives this space, and I think this was one of the opening songs for a lot of her Las Vegas residencies, the power and grace that this song has, it's just absolutely heavenly. I feel like this is one of those songs that, plays at the gates of heaven. And I don't have really anything else to say. I mean, it has some amazing iconic songwriters behind it who just really, and especially on that album, like really tapped into something sacred and special. And I don't find it overly cheesy. I find it just super memorable, so iconic, so beautiful in its composition and in its musicality, and in the catharsis. Because at the end of the day, it's like, let the rain come down and wash away my tears. Let it drown away all my fears. For a new day has come. It's a song of baptism, and it's of so much spiritual significance to me. At number 3, a song that is a cover that I didn't know was a cover until a couple years ago, The Power of Love. Everyone knows this song. Do I really need to say more? I mean, this is probably a song that every single bachelorette party karaoke session has included in it, or every single wedding has included. I'd probably include it at my wedding. There's just something so primal about this song. It is a cover from an 80s by Jennifer Rush. And her version is great as well. But again, Céline just has that special something, that very, very, very silky vocal delivery that, like I said, is like honey, that just kind of translates and transmutes the energy behind it so emotively. It's a love song for the ages, and I don't really have much else to say. So at number 2, I bet you're all wondering when this song was going to pop up, right? Well, spoiler, yes, My Heart Will Go On, or also known as the Titanic song from 1997. This was actually off of her 1997 album, Let's Talk About Love, and then used in the James Horner soundtrack for that film. One of the best films of all time, one of the best ending, closing credit songs of all time. This was my first Céline Dion experience. I probably heard this song, or maybe 5, when I was 5 years old for the first time. I remember hearing it on the radio, and I had no idea who Céline was. Didn't know the context around Titanic. In fact, I didn't actually see Titanic until 2012, which is a whole other story, but which is kind of sad, but it's the truth. But long before I did finally see the movie, and how amazing it is, by the way, I knew of this song like everyone did, and I was obsessed with it. It was one of those things where as a kid, I was just like, put on the radio, I hope that song is on, I hope that song is on. I remember telling my mom how much I loved this song, and I just, because of the melody, I wasn't really listening to the lyrics, I was just that soaring melody that hits you like a wave. Now it's kind of funny because this is probably the one that's grown the most stale to me, because so many other Céline Dion songs have come at me and I've discovered over the years that I almost find them fresher and more exciting. That this song sort of is like, oh yeah, that's great, but it's sort of like, I've heard it so many times that it's lost a little bit of its luster. And that's just gonna happen, So it has a little bit of that fatigue for me, and it definitely is like a song that almost got overplayed. It was so popular that I do almost feel like some of its magic got saturated out a little bit in the hallmarkification of that, film and that song. It deserves it. I do think that it's a little overrated at times because Céline has so many other amazing songs, but at the same time, it's one of the best songs ever written. So can I really fault it for that? So yeah, goodness gracious, I don't know what else to say, but there is a video of me singing this song at 6 years old, and I didn't really know the lyrics, but it's priceless. Okay, so at number 1, I ultimately decided to include a deep cut song that could have been anywhere within my top 5, but I did decide to ultimately give it number 1, and it's actually a song that I only discovered about a year ago. When I fully dived into her 2002 album, A New Day Has Come. We have the song The Prayer with Andrea Bocelli, but little known and lesser discovered is another song called just Prayer. And this song is off of, like I said, her 2002 album. Oh my goodness. This is a song that floored me. This was like the heavens opening up, and the lyrical content was like, oh my goodness, this is next level. So this is talk about an underappreciated Céline track that should have been a single, that I don't know how often she's honestly performed live. I'm sure she has at some point. I should probably do some research and see when she has, because I would like to see that performance. But it's a song that's not very talked about, but it is such a powerful moment. Such beautiful orchestration around a very, very esoteric, powerful vocal, singing about children and hope for the future. It has a little bit of that John Lennon Imagine magic to it, but it feels even more esoteric and full of wonder. Can we touch the soul of heaven? Can we unite a sacred lesson? Every child creates a skylight of beauty. Can you hear cathedrals falling? All the universe is calling. Cry a single cello from your heart. Since the world has lost her way, loneliness journeys endlessly, yet the promised chance remains, gift of what could be. So let the children remember the sun. Let them dance, let them soar, for their lives have begun. Let the children engender the rain as the river runs through fields, forever subsiding their pain. It's so lofty in its unbridled optimism and fuel of imaginative expression of hope. And I just give all of my props to these songwriters. Corey Hart was a writer for this song, and whoever you are, Corey, you're on my wavelength. I think a song dedicated to children like this is something that makes Céline just a step above a lot of the other pop divas that we have. I don't feel like a lot of the other pop divas really, it's so adult all the time. And just because you make a song that's about children doesn't necessarily mean it's geared for children. This is a song a child could enjoy, but it's for adults' ears. It's a reminder of the child in all of us, but it's also a reminder of the children we're raising. I feel like so often as adults, we, stifle the inner child in us and we forget about the world we're leaving behind for the generation that will come after us. And we need to step back and a little outside of time and outside of our little adult bubble and realize the bigger picture. And I feel like Disney does this a lot, and like songs that are like, things that are geared more to children do. But for an artist like Céline to do that when she's definitely more adult contemporary, and it's definitely a song that it could be a lullaby, but it's not necessarily marketed as such. I find that to be, and I like that it's so secular. I like that, it definitely could be something a Christian could interpret as heavily Christian, but it's something that anyone of any religion could interpret as adhering to their own faith. This song is open and embracing of everyone, and it, in its language, so eloquently describes all of those things that I think we ascribe to what faith really is about, and what the future should hold, and what hope is really about. Like, she does sing about angels. I mean, blessing the children. Like, this is language that's often associated with Christianity, but it can be translated into representing so many different things, and it's so universal. And so this is a truly godlike song, and I well up with tears every time I hear it. And it has such a soaring chorus. I mean, talk about a chorus that spreads its wings. I just feel like I'm flying listening to this song. And the vocal runs she does towards the end. Trust me, I've tried to sing this song. Do not attempt to sing it if you do not have the vocal chops. I cannot. I just can't. Because her vocal control, I know this is a studio cut, and that's why I would really love to hear the full-fledged performance live. But the vocal control this song requires is something else. And I don't know. I really, this song, was kind of released like at a time, I think, it was not long after 9/11, and we were at the beginning of the millennium still. And I just feel like that's what this song was all about. It was about that sort of energy of like, where are we going? It's a new millennia. We're at the year 2000 or the year 2002. And what is the world that we are laying about for our children? And in a way, I was some of those children she was singing about, because I was only in 3rd grade when this song was released. And it blows my mind that it took me 17 years to discover this song, and I will forever be mad at myself for that. But that's the way it is, so to speak. But yeah, if you have not discovered this song, please do yourself a favor and listen to it. It is definitely one of her best and one of her most underappreciated and underrated songs of all time. And goodness gracious, one of the best songs for me of the 2000s. But again, all of the songs, particularly that I mentioned in the top 10 or so, are all phenomenal. They're all God tier pop songs. And so Céline, yeah, she deserved an hour-long video of me just really talking about some of her greatest hits. But some of them, like I said, should have been hits and weren't, and they all needed a spotlight. And there are so many other amazing Céline songs in English and, of course, in French, like I said, that I might make a separate video for. But I didn't mention, but I mean, this video could have been eons long. And I as much as I really appreciate Céline's music, I don't necessarily feel like I need to talk about every single Céline song because some of the lyrics are very at face value, and that's fine. You take it and it is what it is. And it's beautiful. And there's not really much more I can say. I mean, how many different adjectives of beautiful can I ascribe to these songs? It would start to get very redundant. So I hope I did it a good justice by talking about them, but I felt like I had to on this channel spotlight these 20 songs, particularly these top 10 songs. And hopefully if you were a bit more in the, only listening to the songs that were on the radio camp of Céline, this video will help shine some light on some newer deep cuts that you hadn't heard before. Because I really hope that like younger generations appreciate Céline Dion. I don't want her to be forgotten. Her music is timeless, and it will always sound relevant. I mean, only some of her very earlier stuff sounds dated. Otherwise, that orchestral element to her music will always be timeless for me. It doesn't sound dated at all. And it's one of the reasons why I actually do believe the 90s was an apex moment for music. And Céline is a big reason for that. A lot of people talk about the 80s and the 70s, and they were great, but for me, there was something magical about the 90s. And yeah, Céline was definitely a big part of that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. What are your top 10, top 15, top 20 Céline Dion songs? Let me know in the comments. Let's have a discussion, because like I said, there's a ton of other great songs of hers. And I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a like and subscribe if you are new to this channel. I do want to just give a quick little shout out. You might have seen at the intro to this video, I am selling face masks. They're made of polyester. They are not for medical use. They are only for casual everyday use through my Fine Art America store. So if you want, you can check out. I've got about 8 or 9 designs available that you could purchase. And it would really help me out. And, we all need to be wearing masks if we're outside. We really should. We need to be staying safe or staying home if we can. So I hope you all are staying safe, staying home, and I will see you all in my next video. I hope you all have a blessed day. Thank you all so much for watching. Peace, love, and light. Bye. Au revoir.